Have you ever wondered if there was a way to truly know when someone is not being completely honest? We've all been there, in that moment of doubt, questioning the veracity of someone's words. We scrutinize their expressions, their body language, searching for that telltale sign that something is amiss. But what if the answers we seek aren't just in what we see, but also in what we hear, or rather, how we hear it? For years, people have tried to crack the code of deception, haven't they? We've developed technologies like the polygraph, often referred to as the lie detector. This device measures physiological responses, like changes in blood pressure, heart rate, and perspiration, with the assumption that lying triggers a measurable stress response. And these methods, they seem scientific, objective, don't they? You are hooked up to a machine, sensors track your body's reactions, and the data supposedly reveals the truth. But the reality is far more complex. The truth is that polygraphs have faced considerable criticism. Their accuracy has been widely debated, and studies have shown that they can be quite unreliable. You see, polygraphs measure physiological arousal, but they don't actually detect lies themselves. This arousal could be due to a whole host of emotions besides deception, like fear, anxiety, or even just the stress of being subjected to the test itself. In fact, someone telling the truth but feeling nervous might register as deceptive, while a skilled liar, who can control their physiological responses, might pass with flying colors. So, the polygraph, once seen as a definitive tool for truth-seeking, is far from foolproof, isn't it? It's like trying to identify a single tree in a vast, dense forest by only looking at the shadows it casts. You might get an idea of its shape, but you're missing the intricate details, the texture of the bark, the specific type of leaves, the way it interacts with the surrounding trees. So, if our traditional methods of lie detection have these inherent limitations, where else can we turn? What if I told you that the key to unlocking truth might lie in something far more accessible, something we encounter every single day, language itself? Not just the words themselves, but the subtle, often subconscious patterns in how we choose to use those words. Think about it. Every time we speak, we're not just conveying information. We're also revealing something about ourselves, about our inner thoughts and feelings. And it's in these unconscious linguistic patterns that the truth, or the deception, often hides. Researchers have delved into this very idea, exploring how language might actually be a more reliable indicator of truthfulness than those traditional methods we talked about. They've discovered some fascinating patterns, linguistic fingerprints, if you will, that tend to appear more often when someone is being deceptive. Now, let's dive into these patterns, these 4 linguistic markers that can offer us a glimpse behind the curtain of deception. We'll explore each of them in detail, not just defining them but illustrating them with real-world examples. By the end of our time together, you will see that these markers are more common than you might think. The first pattern is a decrease in what we call self-references. When people are being honest, they tend to use I or me quite a bit. They place themselves at the center of the narrative, don't they? They talk about their own experiences, their feelings, their perspectives. But when someone is being deceptive, something interesting happens. They tend to distance themselves from the lie. It's a subtle psychological shift. They use fewer first-person pronouns. They might start speaking in more general terms, describing events as if they were a detached observer rather than an active participant. It's as if they are subconsciously trying to create a barrier between themselves and the falsehood they are constructing. They're less likely to say, "I did this" or "I felt that," and more likely to use phrases like, "this happened" or "that was done," creating a sense of emotional distance. The second pattern is an increase in negativity. Now, this might seem counterintuitive at first, but think about it. When someone is lying, they are often experiencing some level of internal discomfort, aren't they? They might feel guilt, shame, or fear about the deception. And these negative emotions can seep into their language. They might express more negative sentiments, use words with negative connotations, or generally have a more pessimistic tone. It's as if the weight of the lie casts a shadow over their words, making their language subtly darker. The third pattern is a simplification of language. When someone is fabricating a story, they often try to keep it simple. They might avoid complex details or elaborate descriptions. It takes cognitive effort to construct and maintain a lie, doesn't it? So the deceptive individual might unconsciously simplify their language to reduce the cognitive load. They might use shorter sentences, simpler vocabulary, and fewer descriptive details. This simplification serves a practical purpose. It's much easier to remember and repeat a simple story than a complex, detailed one, thus reducing the chances of accidental contradictions or inconsistencies. The simpler the story, the lower the mental burden and the risk of exposure. Finally, the fourth pattern, and this one might surprise you, is the use of longer and more complex sentences. It seems to contradict the third one. Now, I did say longer, but did I say complex? No, there's a difference. While liars tend to simplify the content of their story, they might use longer, more convoluted sentences. These are not sentences with complex or rich vocabulary. These are simple words strung together in a long phrase. It's as if they are trying to obscure the truth behind a smokescreen of words. They might add unnecessary details, tangential information, or qualifiers that don't really contribute to the core message, but serve to make the story seem more believable, more detailed than it actually is. They are weaving a web of words, hoping to trap the listener in its complexity. These four patterns, the decrease in self-references, the increase in negativity, the simplification of content, and the use of longer, less complex sentences, they are like subtle cracks in a carefully constructed facade. They are the unconscious linguistic cues that can betray a lie, revealing the truth that lies beneath. To really understand these patterns, let's look at some real-world examples. Think about the infamous case of Lance Armstrong, the celebrated cyclist who was ultimately stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles after years of denying doping allegations. Researchers analyzed his language in interviews given before and after his confession, and the differences are striking. Before his confession, when Armstrong was vehemently denying the doping accusations, his language was marked by those four patterns we just discussed. He distanced himself from the accusations using fewer I statements. He expressed more negativity, often framing the accusations as attacks on his character. He kept his denials relatively simple, avoiding detailed explanations of his training or racing strategies. He used longer sentences filled with qualifiers and justifications, creating a sense of obfuscation. Now, compare that to his language. After his confession, when he finally admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs, the shift is remarkable. He started using I a lot more, taking ownership of his actions. He expressed remorse and regret, but the overall tone became less negative, more reflective. His explanations became more detailed, more nuanced. He provided specific information about the doping practices, the methods used, the people involved. The sentences were still long, but now they were filled with factual information, not with those empty qualifiers he'd used before. He was no longer trying to hide, he was revealing. He was no longer simplifying, he was explaining. Another compelling example is the case of John Edwards, the former US Senator, who was embroiled in a scandal involving an extramarital affair and a cover-up. Again, researchers analyzed his language in interviews given before and after the truth came to light. Before the truth was revealed, when Edwards was denying the affair, his language exhibited those same four patterns. He distanced himself from the allegations using fewer self-references. He expressed negativity towards the media and those who were questioning him. He kept his denials simple, avoiding specific details about the relationship, and he used those long, convoluted sentences to deflect attention and create confusion. He was building a wall of words trying to keep the truth at bay, but after the truth came out, after he admitted to the affair, his language shifted dramatically. He started taking responsibility for his actions, using more I statements. While he acknowledged the pain he had caused, the overall negativity decreased. He provided more details about the affair, the timeline of events, the reasons behind his actions. His sentences became more direct, more straightforward. He was no longer hiding behind a veil of deception. He was exposing himself, laying bare the truth, however painful it might be. These examples, Lance Armstrong and John Edwards, they are high-profile cases, aren't they? But they illustrate a fundamental truth about human communication. When we lie, Our language changes in subtle but detectable ways. These linguistic patterns, these 4 markers we've discussed, they are not just theoretical concepts. They are observable phenomena that have been documented in real-world situations. Now you might be thinking, this is all very interesting, but how does this apply to my everyday life? I'm not dealing with high-profile athletes or politicians. And that's a valid point. But the principles we've discussed here are applicable to all of us in any situation where truth and deception are at play. Think about your daily interactions, the conversations you have with friends, family, colleagues, even strangers. Have you ever had a gut feeling that someone wasn't being completely honest with you? Maybe it was a friend who seemed evasive about their weekend plans, a colleague who gave a vague explanation for missing a deadline, or a salesperson who seemed a little too eager to close a deal. These linguistic markers can help you become a more discerning listener, more attuned to the subtle cues that might indicate deception. It's not about becoming a human lie detector, constantly scrutinizing everyone's words for signs of falsehood. It's about developing a deeper understanding of how language works, how it reflects our inner thoughts and feelings, and how it can be used, consciously or unconsciously, to shape the truth. Imagine being able to navigate conversations with greater confidence, knowing that you have the tools to discern truth from falsehood. Imagine being able to identify potential red flags in a business negotiation, a personal relationship, or any other situation where honesty is paramount. This knowledge can empower you to make more informed decisions, to protect yourself from manipulation, and to build stronger, more authentic relationships based on trust. It's also important to remember that these linguistic patterns are not foolproof indicators of deception on their own. They are clues, not definitive proof. Someone might use fewer self-references because they are naturally shy or introverted, not because they are lying. Someone might express negativity because they are having a bad day, not because they are trying to deceive you. Context is crucial, isn't it? You need to consider the entire situation, the person's baseline behavior, their personality, and the specific circumstances surrounding the conversation. This is not about becoming paranoid or suspicious of everyone around you. It's about becoming a more mindful communicator, more aware of the power of language, both in what is said and what is left unsaid. It's about developing your ability to listen, not just to the words themselves, but to the subtle nuances that can reveal the truth that lies beneath. It's about understanding that language is a complex and multifaceted tool, one that can be used to build bridges of understanding or to erect walls of deception. The journey into the world of linguistic lie detection is a fascinating one, isn't it? It's a journey that takes us deep into the heart of human communication, revealing the intricate interplay between language, psychology, and truth. It is a journey of discovery, of learning to listen with a more discerning ear, to observe with a more perceptive eye, and to understand with a more profound empathy. It is a journey that ultimately empowers us to connect with others on a more authentic and meaningful level, fostering relationships built on trust, transparency, and a shared commitment to truth. And that, in itself, is a journey worth taking, a journey that can transform not only how we interact with the world around us, but also how we understand ourselves. As we continue to explore the depths of language and its connection to our inner worlds, we open ourselves up to a more nuanced and insightful existence, where truth becomes not just a concept, but a guiding principle in our journey through life. So keep listening, keep questioning, and keep exploring the fascinating world of language, for within its intricate tapestry lies the power to unlock the truth and forge deeper connections with the world around you.